I am very, very late to this party. I only played the original Persona 5 back mid-2020 when we were all locked away shortly after Royal's release. Then, about a year later, around February, I bought and played Royal on my Twitch, which is plugged in the description of every video, by the way. And it was a blast. And I have some other thoughts while I wrote this that I thought that I'd let be known. 1. I think it's a great game, and Royal might be one of the greatest games ever made, just RPGs alone. And 2, this is what I feel the modern FF7, where no one's gonna shut the fuck up about it for over 2 decades. But what does this have to do with Ranked Palaces? That's what you came here for. Well, the story is fantastic itself, and I feel that the palaces only enhance that, and Royal making them great examples of RPG dungeons overall, in my opinion. And people still talk about how bad Okumura's palace is in vanilla. You know who you are! I see you. So here's how it's gonna go down. From worst to best, all the main palaces will be ranked. So no mementos or any extra layers or stuff like that. Alright, let's do it. While I am of the belief that Royal has no bad palaces, Futaba's pyramid is mid at best. The main argument here is that it changes the least out of all the new updates within Royal, and I'm inclined to agree here. Though the story has always been the best part. Story follows Futaba Sakura, adopted daughter of resident bean daddy Sojiro. She's kept mostly hidden and lives like a hikikomori with extreme survivor's guilt? Is that right? She watched her mother walk into traffic committing suicide, feeling it's her fault and she'll stay in her room to die, akin to a pharaoh in a tomb, which is where the pyramid and Egyptian theme comes from. As we go through, we see how Futaba views herself in regards to her mother, feeling like she didn't really love her, so her mom decided to end it all to end this misery. Though deep down, Futaba still feels that her mom loved her to some extent, but has anxious doubts about it. It's real interesting to delve into her character like that as you see how she really feels not just about her mom, but herself. While this works, the rest of the dungeon is honestly okay. The music has this nice melancholic sounding vibe. It's probably the second best part of the palace. I love this track. It gets stuck in my head. And the best puzzles are the ones that progress the story, these weird mural looking things. And some of these enemies can suck a fatty at this point in the game if you're not leveled up enough. I'm looking right at you, Anubis. The boss isn't much to write home about either. It's just waiting until the ballista shows up, then you send someone to fire, then do damage to the Sphinx head with their mom's head. What? It's all sorts of weird. I do like the conclusion where Futaba finds out her mother's true feelings, even though it's a cognitive being based on Futaba's mindset, or something like that. I don't quite remember. It's Persona, half the game doesn't make sense, I don't question it anymore. It's nice to get the closest equivalent to a P4 dungeon, but in all honesty, this ends up being a plague on an exceptional roster. Get it? Mementos Depths, or the Prison of Aseda, or whatever you want to call it, is a dungeon I half love, half dislike. Let's start with the negatives, that being the first half, which covers from the beginning to the Path of the Grail. It's not that great, it's just Mementos with extra steps, but you go through it like a palace. That could already be great, or it could be a slog. Honestly, this feels like the latter. The music gets a special mention. I mean, it feels a little less good than Futaba's, but it does lull you to this interesting aura of mystery, I guess. You feel comforted yet conflicted. One thing I really like is that it's interesting to see the people of Shibuya find this as a place of escape, rather than a prison, which is how it looks. That includes the previous palace owners, who decide to reside in this closed-off state as a way to atone for their crimes in a sense. Basically becoming sheeple. Just obeying what they're told in this mindset. That's it for what it has to offer, honestly. Nothing more. The puzzles in between are a decent challenge, but they're really not great. I at least admire the idea of the light puzzles, but it just doesn't end up that fun. It gets annoying, especially that one towards the end. Where things really kick off is after you get your shit kicked by the Grail. Yeah, that's right, the actual factual Holy Grail that I keep mentioning. You see everyone get Thanos'd into oblivion, or at least your main party members. No one seems to know that you exist, which is just like most introverts, I guess. But once we disappear ourselves, we learn the truth of the Velvet Room and the influence that everything in the game has had with the God of Control. You get a nice little pep talk with the team, getting them back out of their own personal cages. And as everyone forgets the Phantom Thieves, it's up to you to make them remember. It's a grand final climb as you fight some real tough enemies and the 4 Archangels of the Bible. It's awesome. Leading to the Salty Grail Runback and Yaldabaoth. He's a little bit tricky, but not bad with the right team, at least. This palace was honestly a great way to cap off the original adventure. While it has similar gripes to Futaba's, give or take, the latter part is what really makes it shine for me. I'm gonna keep this one incredibly brief. Everyone sung this place's lows and slightly higher lows. I think it's leagues above its predecessor, but it's still plagued by its sins of the father, if you will. Space aesthetic doesn't work and just honestly seems so much out of place. Music's not great, a little grating at times, but it's whatever. Puzzles, while massively buffed, are still a little subpar. Blue Alien Robo Haru is the best new addition, you should all appreciate that. It had the best glow up of them all, but I'm done talking about it. I'm done hearing about it. Next palace. No, seriously, next palace. This is the entire discussion on Okubara. Madarame is an interesting case. Truth be told, I really like his palace after truly analyzing it. Bit more than I did the original. I don't know why, but I don't know, I'm just here to place him. Let's just go through it, I guess. This palace centers around Ichi Ryusai Madarame, his relationship with Yusuke Kitagawa, eccentric artist who views Madarame as a father figure after the boy's mom passed, though Yusuke feels inadequate and frustrated when Madarame's art gets praised. So, through some sleuthing, we find that Madarame is a shitty artist who takes works as his own, abusing his pupils' talents and benefits, both emotionally, physically, and, well, no shit, he steals art. The thieves try to help the boy, clearly trapped, but to no avail, so they go into the metaverse and confirm everything correct. Yusuke joins the party, and then we're a go. Madarame himself craps himself as a somewhat compelling villain. He seems like a very kind old man, helping a kid in need. But as we look deeper, we see more of his misdeeds and his true colors in a sense. And trust me, there is a real fucked up thing he does that we find out about later. Or should I say, already have done. Yikes, if you know, you know. The palace shows this off pretty well, though. Obviously, the museum aesthetic is great for the feeling of being his pupils, embraces that he only treats his students as art pieces for his own gallery of fame. as well as everything else looking sort of cheap and fake, but still somewhat glamorous in the end of the day. The music here, named A Woman, is another melancholic piece highlighting the sadness in Yusuke's own struggle due to his mother and living with Madarame. It's bound to get stuck in your head, and a real contrast from the last Palace's theme. Anything's a better contrast than the frickin' sweatshop. The dungeon itself, puzzles and all, is just okay. The feet puzzle's still here, and it's still really silly. Some of the enemies can be a real pain, but that's a criticism so minimal it doesn't even matter. The biggest highlight here is the boss fight. This fight was a challenge, a test of your moves, but not real special before. In Royal, this gets an extra phase, which actually emphasizes baton pass a bit. So you best have something to cover all weaknesses for every element, or else you're gonna get screwed. This place has a lot of positives both story and gameplay wise. I used to not like it that much, as I said before, but I grew a bit of an appreciation. But from this point on, we're entering truly amazing territory, believe me. Kanashiro's Bank is another palace I grew much appreciation for over time. In fact, I used to think this place is just mid at best. That goes for most of the original palaces. I only used to like 3 of them or something. The story was never the best, and I think that's due in part to the lack of much personal connection between the ruler and new party member, Makoto Beep Boop Nijima. Yeah, they're connected by the situation, that's all just happenstance. I guess I should talk about story now, like I usually do. This one revolves more around Makoto than Kanashiro, believe it or not. Makoto's your standard goody-good student council president. He's been tracking you down since a while ago, thinking you're a very sussy Baka's fan of thieves, but she still needs the proof. And she's also being blackmailed by the principal. Great. Well, since Ryuji's an idiot, the beans are spilt, now she knows too much. Instead of killing the witness like they should, they bring her along into the metaverse. That way their secret will be kept. This leads her to telling us about Junya Kanashiro, a notorious gangster that not even the police can catch. He uses high schools to push drugs on the street while they are blissfully unaware. This eventually leads to Makoto being caught and taken in by some goons directly into the Mad Lad's hideout. We go after, and then he blackmails us all with some photos showing these kids with booze and drugs. Yeah, not a good sign. Now it's time to take on the palace. Oh, and Makoto joins us with a sick-ass transformation. Yeah! The coolest looking persona ever! Look at this! Nah, dude, that's a bike! Throughout the entire dungeon, it's nice to see Makoto's transformation, and to have the thieves see why she does what she does. That being the blackmail from earlier that I mentioned from Principal Eggboy. She also wanted to prove herself after feeling inferior to the world around her, including her sister. She's also not a bad party member just in general, being another party-centric healer, and Nuke being a really nice element, not just in this dungeon, but the game, since not many enemies are resistant to it, but not many are weak to it either, which is her downside. I felt it would be good to mention this before I see comments saying, Makoto mid lol. She's not bad, seemingly misunderstood. The community hates her. I like Makoto, okay? As for the palace itself, I love the look of it. The bank is a genius idea, and the fact that we see both above and below ground, with the shitty operations down under, it represents Kanashiro fairly well, but that's about it that I can see in terms of representation. And to be honest, we don't learn much about why he's so evil, except for these little excerpts of his voice throughout the palace by solving puzzles. He feels very insecure about himself, wanting to feel powerful, and then he just became a gangster, that way he'd be able to feel some of it. Just make him feel better about himself, I guess. It's fine, but compared to the previous 2 palace owners, chronological wise, it doesn't feel special or too impactful in my honest opinion. Puzzles aren't too bad here either. I'm normally not a fan of number-based cipher things or whatever, where the X equals certain number, but it works. don't get me started on that final one.
For the last fucking time, nobody said there'd be math!
Now, the music also gets the biggest mention. It's still one of the highest tier bops ever. Oh, it's so good. The bass breakdown sends chills down my spine every time. One of my favorite palace themes in the game, I'm not gonna lie. And the final point, honestly, the boss is way better than it used to be. This time it actually starts with the Piggytron, making you think, oh, it's shorter, only for it to switch things up again. Second phase having Kaneshiro in a physical fight, but he has hired goons to do his dirty work and basically protect him, leaving you to deal with the other two, or else you won't be able to do jack shit to the boss. I definitely found the challenge way more enjoyable, and the overall palace is really good on top of it, just not good enough to reach the upper half though. RPG tutorial dungeons have this reputation for being a slog, very overbearing and generally a nuisance. Kamoshida's Castle says, "Up yours, chump," and makes it somewhat enjoyable. It introduces everything you'll need to know story-wise, gameplay-wise, your characters, all that good stuff. Crafting's still one of my favorite stories in the game, even though it's only number 4 on here. It really tells you the kind of things that the game will go in about, give you an idea, sort of tone-wise. The story of this place officially starts on the first day of school. Your protag's a delinquent with a criminal record who nobody wants to trust. And then, on your way, you see this blonde girl on the way to school, waiting in some cover amidst the rain. Not soon after, you see Danny Sexbang of the Game Grumps as a teacher driving a car to pick the girl up, only for some blonde limber lad in your school uniform talk about the same guy, being real pissed off about it. You end up walking to school together, and you end up in a castle, like all school trips go. Dorm with the dungeon and all. You end up leaving, somehow getting out of there, not knowing what just happened. You missed half the day of school, getting in a bit of trouble, but you're let off because you're new, I guess. Why not? The game needed to go somehow. You see that same teacher and the girl on multiple occasions throughout the next few days, learning the struggles she goes through, as well as that the teacher's a weird sexual abusive pervert, and a physically abusive asshole, both of which apply to the volleyball team that he manages. And will be expelled if we don't play the game. That might be a good thing to mention. Amidst all this, we awaken to our rebellious spirit, known as a persona. You know, the thing the game's named after. We meet the most decisively liked/hated character in the entire game, believe me, I know. And even meeting true best boy Ryuji, you know, the blonde one from earlier. All while learning how the game works inside and outside the palace. Yeah, the length of it all is very long, and honestly, it's one of my least favorite things about starting a new playthrough. There's so much to get into that it doesn't really bother me that much the first time round. Story really kicks off partway through, as soon as you start getting accustomed to going inside this new palace, inside this place called the Metaverse. It gets so raw right out the gate, it's still unbelievable it exists. It's still great motivation, not only for our existing party, but our newest party member, and just the rest of the crew. Which, if you know what happens, again, you know what happens. The dungeon itself has the sleazy look that melds with the castle very well, and combined with the music, it feels like a shady club scene in a film, or an old porno. Which, as weird as that analogy sounds, makes it work for Kamoshida's character. Seeing the real disgusting side of this horrible man. None of the puzzles really outstay their welcome, and Royal improved a bit more of the bland ones, like the old map puzzle in the dining hall, and the boss. Oh boy, the boss! It was pretty alright before, but the new inclusions really took things in a different but great direction, surprising you off the bat of what Royal is going to be like, especially if you play the original. So partway through the battle, he'll summon Mishima, one of his players on the volleyball team, for a super attack. If you survive it, or you take out Mishima, he'll summon Shiho, a girl he was perving on earlier, and then yeah, she did that. Yikes. But she serves the same purpose in battle. Survive, and the rest is easy. Unless you're me and you just suck at the video game and you die every single time you have to switch it to easy. I'm not good at the game, please forgive me. Overall, this place has a real strong start to the game, despite the length to get the actual gameplay. It really made me fall in love with the Royal and just the entirety of Persona 5 all over again. There's so much care into this initial trek, it makes it a strong indicator of the quality of the rest of the game. I bet you're bound to love it too. And that makes it reason enough to have it placed this high. Oh come on, what else did you expect? Once my favorite palace is now down to number 3, but that's still a high honor because Sai's palace is still really freaking good. Now, despite it being a classic case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, it doesn't impact how well this place actually is. You know, compared to something like Futaba's or the Memento Steps. Everything from story, palettes, characters, etc. still really good. Honestly, the only thing I'm not too into is the boss. The idea around it is neat, you know, the roulette wheel, and Royal adds a little new twist, but other than that, it's really bare bones, and that's probably about the closest I can get to a negative that I could think of. The story this time is around Makoto's sister, actually, who's a prosecuting lawyer. She's trying to convict us of all the sick crimes. She's way too hellbent on doing this, more so than actually caring about anything else or anyone else. She wants to win, even if it means killing a man, I guess, because why not? Meanwhile, not Light Yagami finds that we're criminals and wants to help, which can definitely have no repercussions whatsoever. So the chase is on to make sure that we don't get caught by beating up this lady. The palace is separated into 4 different segments. First part's the roulettes, which is rigged, so we go shut it off. The second is the slot machines, which is rigged, so we go change the odds. Third, a maze of darkness to navigate through. And, hey wait, the second half is now gone. These people really didn't like it. That or they're just bitches and thought it was really tough. And finally, a battle arena hosted by Gohan. He really hates us winning for some reason. This palace is a test of not only some of the players' wits, but the thieves too. There's a few roadblocks along the way, and a lot of the puzzles, while albeit simple, are creative in their own right. Honestly, there's not much else I can say about this palace. Just like Okumura, people have sung its highs and lows, yet this time it's in a positive light. This palace is more build up to setting the scene for the end of the game. Not much really else. Saving the best for last. Whims of Fate still slaps. Play me out! If you're keeping up with the list, then you know which 2 are left. The real question is, who's taking number 2's spot? I had to think long and hard about this, and it was not easy. Let me just start by saying, I am so sorry. Alright, now look, I'm gonna say this. I love Dr. Maruki. I love the character and the entirety of the 3rd semester. Maruki's such a great addition as a confidant, being the ultimate snack daddy and a real good way for the thieves to be relieved of their tensions, having someone to talk their issues with, which they didn't really have, so it kinda adds that extra little nice layer. And the 3rd semester is a masterclass of how an expansion should be done, taking what we know of the original story and flipping it 3,600 degrees, with the build-up and reveal of it all being quite possibly one of the best, if not the best in the game. The story here is split into 3 different parts. First part is Marky himself struggling with losing the love of his life after so many years. Everything that he's worked towards, including his research, the research lab that he wanted, just all of his life's work down the drain, and generally wanting to make sure that everyone is happy so no one has to go through what he had. The second part is about a girl dealing with her insecurities over her own identity, which she completely changed to handle the grief of her sister's death she felt she directly caused. The final part being an alternate reality scenario where the wishes of the thieves are realized, but none of the events of the game really happened, per se. This is probably the most interesting part since
You're supposed to be dead!
Sketchy, Ketchy, and you form a little investigation team trying to figure out why things are like this. Eventually with everyone rejecting this reality that Marky made for them. Marky himself is such a tragic character that I feel more bad for him, but I don't really want to fight him. So much that the game agrees that he is a bad guy, but he is not the bad guy. An interesting dichotomy between these two ideals. Just never really wanted to engage in conflict to begin with. Making Aizen here my actual favorite palace ruler, even above the number one. Kasumire, as I call her, is a neat reveal that I never suspected throughout the game. It's nice to see her actually join the team instead of the build-up from the beginning of the game, / the end of the casino. She makes for such a wonderful character that inclusion into the team feels welcome, unlike Poochie over here. Then there's Akechi. Oh, sweet baby Philemon Akechi. He is a major highlight of this place, just third semester in general, being the driving force for a lot of the story. I love seeing this form that we get to see a little bit earlier, but now it's in full blast. It's very nice in contrast to his friendly, pretty boy facade. This snide bitch has so many good lines that I can write an essay on why he's the best glow-up in the frickin' game. God bless Robbie Damon for bringing this wonderful lad's voice to our ear holes so much. The dungeon itself looks neat, very static white, much like a doctor's office or laboratory or research center. There aren't too many puzzles, and to be honest, the ones that there are mostly okay. It adds an extra layer to Mementos at some point, which is neat, I guess. Also adds new enemies, a lot of which are from Persona 1. It definitely was a neat thing to learn. The music creates a very calming yet somewhat imposing aura, giving us another major bop, fitting for an endgame dungeon. The little lore segments are the most interesting thing about the entire palace. But just in general, as it stands at face value, it's sort of just okay. Then there's the boss fight. Oh man, we got another good one here. From the initial ascend from the beginning up through essentially Eden with the song I Believe blaring, up to the point you reach Marky and his own persona, Azathoth. This is a tough boss, I will say, but it's supposed to be. This is the truest test of your team comp, which if you're me, you're not very good at. The hype ends for a bit, honestly, when reaching Adam Kadmon is you just need to punch Marky a bit, and then the phase after that is very scripted and not that great, but it's fine. After that scripted fight, it's non-stop hype. Get the very famous checkmate scene, which is just watch. Oh my god, this is so cool. He's gonna shoot him in the face. Take the shot. Ready? Jackpot. That's way cooler than Jackpot. Checkmate? Fuck, dude, that's awesome. And then up to the point when Marky is refusing to give up, punching his aggressions out, just mwah, chef's kiss. Even now as the script is being refined, I'm still not sure this is where it should be, but it feels right at the end of the day. I believe that the initial dragging segments really keep it back from reaching number 1, but maybe I'm missing something about it all. In the end, it just feels right. And now, you all know what's left.
Country that has been tainted by villains. Social reform is essential. I humbly ask that you cast your vote for me, Masayoshi Shido.
Hate me all you want. Tell me in the comments why I stub Marquis, but I will not bend. I don't just like Shido's arc, the boat, not like character arc. I love it. Firstly, I think it's a great idea the way it represents things, because if you haven't been keeping up, all the palaces represent the ruler in some way, somewhat. Kamoshida's the king of castle, Madarame's art exhibit, Marqui's research facility, etc, etc. See, Shido just goes ham, making this place a big old cruise liner with the world completely drowned below him, helping his dream to steer the country like a ship. And all on board are the wealthy and elite, just like a corrupt politician would think. It's interesting that you get access to the treasure route immediately, which is something you never really come across, but it's locked by 5 seals that require 5 letters of recommendation, held by certain elite members. It really gives this feeling of a traditional endgame dungeon, having the multiple bosses before the big bad. And big bad Shido is, believe me. See, he's been built up from the beginning as the guy who ruined the protag's entire life, causing him to be ostracized from society forever. Now it's time for the bald bastard to go down for his multiple crimes he's been doing behind the scenes. And all just because he wanted to become Prime Minister. What a bitch. But how's this dungeon fare? Well, for starters, I always thought it looked nice, and Arc is a well put together theme. The speeches in the background the only way to listen to this track, which I specifically recorded from the game, just so I can give it to you now. It gives you so much motivation to take him down as he spews lies and other political jargon as you just trek your way through. And most people hated these little maze segments in between, especially when the mice got introduced. But honestly, I say they're bitches! They're not that bad, you just suck. I never understood the criticism, I always liked them. And now it gets even better, because you get cheese for everyone! It's sort of pattern-oriented Gauntlet, just all throughout, which is simple yet effective. It always goes investigate, boss, sneak, maze, rinse and repeat. I can get if this doesn't make it interesting, especially compared to Marquis. I can guarantee it's almost similar, just minus the maze. But, in my opinion, what puts it above Marquis is the final bosses of this area. Let's take them one at a time, and in order, of course. First is Akechi. Oh yeah, he was actually a rat bastard, but if you were Dumbo like me, you would have figured out the answer in the beginning with the funny meme. This was the start of the Akechi that I loved during the 3rd semester, and it comes in really strong. It turns out he's Shido's bastard son, who was abandoned as a child, soon learning about the ways of justice, becoming the detective that we know today. And he's also been changing hearts to get near Shido for his own nefarious purposes. And he's been a pain in our ass in the shadows, as a notorious black-masked assailant within the metaverse. We've heard about it before, but now we finally figure out the answer. He tried to stop us, but we came back even stronger. Now he's out for blood. The first phase is honestly for babies. Typical stuff and nothing of note. It's the second phase where things get interesting, leading to a transition that still gives me chills to this day. Oh, it's so good. Like, just watch this and tell me that you don't get excited for a fight. Yeah, so now Ecchi Akechi is way stronger, and if you weren't prepared to manage resources, then you're kinda screwed, or you're just gonna at least be in trouble. Beat him, and then you see Akechi Pankeki pay the ultimate price. Or so we think, because we never really see him again outside 3rd semester, if you did it. It's a real nice emotional moment, impacted even more by his confidant if you did it, which you should, because it's pretty good character development. For a character that had a little, but not a lot, it made him into a great one. And then there's Shido. While he's not as good as a boss fight as Akechi in terms of story relevance, it was my favorite fight in vanilla out of all the main palace rulers, and Royal gave me even more reason to love it thanks to the new additions within the game. So the first few phases are just normal sort of smackdowns. First only taking magic damage, then physical, and then just try and take out this pyramid. Once he abandons this pyramid of people, a weird homogeneous clump, the fight continues, just Shido versus your party, as he goes full Armstrong on your asses. Twice. Both times become even more stronger, and you best be prepared for the literal endurance test that this entire fight has. Now, normally when he lets go of his armor opening the gates like he did against Gaara, that phase is the last one. Royal decided to take it one step further, and the best way possible. He says, "Fuck your party," and initiates a one-on-one. The arena surrounded by earthly tremors and flames. You bet your sweet Bippy you be prepared. He has a pattern of attacks, and you gotta make sure to endure it, or else you'll have to start over from his first phase. Now, the pattern does make it kind of a joke, but really the initial impact really hits home either way for me. While this palace doesn't do much for others, it's the little pieces and cogs of the mechanical puzzle that even make it that much more special, and honestly the contender for my #1. I like to feel that this was a video made out of love. A love for a game that I took so long to play and don't regret playing, and even buying the extended version later on, despite some of the issues with and even jabs made throughout, not to mention the mostly shitty internet community. It's honestly still in my top 15, maybe even top 10, just of all time. I will never not recommend this game if asked. The same goes for the rest of the series, if I'm being real. Atlus has truly made something special, and without it I wouldn't be here making this video for all you know. I must say thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching. I await your comments on how my opinions are wrong, and I'll see you in the next one.